Everyone, we'll get started in just a minute or two. Folks are still joining us. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those on the West Coast. I think we're still having folks trickle in, but we're going to go ahead and get started since we have a pretty full agenda today. Just wanted to start by thanking you all for joining our virtual roundtable, Growing County Economies with Stronger Childcare Systems. My name is Arabella Pluta-Ehlers, and I'm the Program Manager for Children, Youth, and Families here at the National Association of Counties. This roundtable is being held in partnership between the National Association of Counties Research Foundation and the National Children's Facilities Network. And for those of you who are not familiar, just some quick background on who we are at NACo. We work to strengthen America's 3,069 counties with the goal of creating healthy, safe, and vibrant counties across America. NACo also unites county elected officials and county employees to advocate county priorities in federal policymaking. And we promote exemplary county policies and practices, provide technical assistance to counties, and create spaces for peer exchange. And as many of you on this call today know, counties are really on the front lines of our service delivery, investing in human services, education, health, workforce, delivering those services, creating partnerships, and shaping local policies. Counties make significant investments in human services and administer or support many of the programs that serve young children and their families. There's some examples up on the slide. Counties also play a key role in community development, investing in and championing workforce development programs, job growth, and economic mobility for our residents. And I think this won't come as a surprise to anyone who's on this call, but in the last year and a half in particular, it's become really clear that childcare is an essential workforce support. We know that millions of Americans rely on childcare to be able to work, particularly those who are low income and working in industries that have been most affected by the pandemic. And we've seen throughout the initial CARES Act funding, and now as the American Rescue Plan Act funding is being implemented, counties have stepped up to provide childcare to essential workers and are leveraging ARPA funds to increase investments in childcare and shape the local service delivery system to expand and improve access to families. And we know that as the economy continues to reopen, access to high quality childcare will help parents remain in the workforce and be more productive, knowing that their children are safe and receiving the support they need to learn and develop. So we know that the childcare supply was heavily impacted by COVID-19 and is still recovering, but counties really can play a role here by making deeper investments and applying local innovation to expand childcare. Through our partnership with the National Children's Facilities Network, we'll be highlighting best practice solutions for local leaders who are including childcare in their broader policy conversations on economic development and mobility. And our roundtable today will explore how counties can invest in and support the expansion of early learning facilities to promote healthy development for infants and toddlers and support gainful employment for parents as well as childcare providers. We'll be hearing today from county leaders who are driving this work and then engaging you in an interactive session on the topic. We'll have breakout rooms later in this session where you'll have a chance to connect with your peers and with our speakers. But to start, I want to hand it over to our partners at the National Children's Facilities Network. And just want to say how excited we are to be partnering with them on this really important issue. We know that our county leaders are thinking about childcare, are interested in making those investments and expanding access, and just excited to be working with NCFN on the great resources that they have and the connections with local communities across the country. So I will go ahead at this time and introduce Nicole Barcliffe. Nicole is the Senior Policy Director at the Local Initiative Support Corporation, or LISC, and the co-chair of the National Children's Facilities Network. And as a Senior Policy Director, she advocates for federal policies that support LISC's mission to forge resilient and inclusive communities of opportunity across America, creating great places to live, work, visit, do business, and raise families. Nicole, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arabella, and thank you for facilitating this discussion, but also thank your entire team, including Rashida and Rachel, who we've been working with really closely to forge this exciting new collaboration with NCFN. I'm pleased to introduce my NCFN colleagues who represent various community development financial institutions with a really strong commitment to integrating supports for childcare and early learning programs into their broader community development missions. You'll be hearing from Angie Garling, NCFN co-chair and National Director of Early Care and Education Programs at the Low Income Investment Fund. My organizational colleague, Cindy Larson, who's the Senior Director for Childcare and Early Learning Programs at LISC, and Jacob Roche, Senior Policy Analyst at Reinvestment Fund. Later on in the presentation, you'll hear from two more executive committee organizational members who will be highlighting their work with counties, but wanted to honorably mention them here. Jesse Maxwell, who's a Senior Business Development Officer at Self Help, and Ashanti Bryant, who is the Director of Early Childhood Services at IFF. Now I'll turn things over to Angie, who's going to provide some contextual information about NCFN and really kick off our overview for today's session. Angie?
Great, thank you, Nicole. And hi, everybody. It's great to see you all. And I'm Angie Garling with the Low Income Investment Fund, but previously worked for almost 2 decades for a county, Alameda County in California. So I feel like I'm among friends and colleagues. And wanted to just start by showing you the slide that says, what is a community development financial institution? I didn't really know much about that before I joined LIF, and now I know quite a bit more, but want to make sure that for those of you who may be new to the term, we are financial intermediaries with community development as a primary mission. So we really believe that all residents in this country should be able to access communities of opportunity, equity, and well-being. And that is LIF's mission and the work that many CDFIs do. And so really we cultivate specialized knowledge and forge deep relationships to channel private investment, to really marry public investment and private investment in focusing on communities of opportunity. So we do grants and loans. A lot of CDFIs do primarily loans, but grants as well. We also provide technical assistance and capacity building, and particularly in early care and education, very tailored technical assistance. Also, our CDFIs have been very busy providing emergency and disaster recovery, as well as policy, advocacy, research, and field building. So you can see the group of different stakeholders that we partner with, including public agencies, private philanthropy, community stakeholders, childcare resource and referral agencies, and other local and state intermediaries. Next slide. So what is the National Children's Facilities Network? Well, we are a coalition of just recently over 50 nonprofit financial and technical assistance intermediaries like CDFIs and other early care and education stakeholders involved in planning, developing, and financing high quality ECE facilities and looking at good business models to ensure supply building and preservation of the current supply that we have. So our purpose is really to share information on ECE facilities so we can get to a broader base of knowledge across the country, and then providing technical assistance and capacity building. And then to also look at recommending legislation, which is happening at a very critical level right now, to and also ease regulations and provide and advocate for supportive regulations that can really affect access and high quality facilities. And then really looking at developing different kinds of financing strategies and initiatives. And then you can see the executive committee, there are 5 members. As Arabella and Nicole said earlier, Nicole and I are the co-chairs from LISC and LIF. And we also have representatives here today from IFF, Reinvestment Fund, and Self-Help. I'm going to turn it over to Cindy.
Thanks so much, Angie. Hello, everyone. Cindy Larson. I am very fortunate to be Nicole's colleague here at the Local Initiative Support Corporation. I have worked for a very long time in the field of childcare and early learning, and for a particularly long time in the CDFI sector, working to support the early childhood community and partners like all of you to help try and tackle some of this infrastructure challenge. I just wanted to talk for a minute about early childhood financing, why it's so complex, but also why it matters so much. So the complexities are highlighted on the slide that's on your screen right now. It's a very challenging sector. The finances just don't work that well. That's part of what's causing the issue right now. It's incredibly expensive for families. Providers run on ridiculously thin margins, and the staff make very low wages. This is not an ideal business model by any stretch, and very few organizations or individuals are in it because it is a fantastic business to run. It's really about the community benefit, which is also why CDFIs come to the table around this. So in addition to some of the things that are highlighted here around financing challenges, just historical lack of access to capital for women, and particularly women of color who make up the majority of owners and operators of this sector, the low cost margins and other things. This tends to be very expensive space to develop. It can often only work in certain locations. It requires a lot of build out, and that can be true from the smallest provider to very large organizations as well. The other complexity, and I think something that will really resonate for county leaders that are here today, is how different it is from other sectors that we really dig deep on. Things like public schools, public libraries, other types of buildings that are so essential to the community that may have much more discrete funding sources for infrastructure. Childcare, because of its mixed delivery system, is also all over the place in terms of funding that can be available for it. So you have everything from a small sole proprietor up to large Head Start and pre-K programs that are operated by cities, counties, and states, all the way up to very large multi-site for-profits. And that requires really highly sophisticated capital stacks that braid in a number of things, of which debt can be a really important but complicated piece. In the interest of limited time, the one thing that I want to emphasize to you is grants and other ways of helping to subsidize the sector are vital, but financing is as well. And there are ways that counties can help to support this. And what I would say is that the CDFI sector believes that financing and debt, while not always sort of the most exciting thing to talk about, can be just a fundamental tool for asset building, wealth building, stabilization, program growth, all of those things. And so we're really committed to working with partners to help try to figure this all out. If you can move to the next slide. I just want to emphasize sort of the interconnectedness of childcare to other pieces. With thanks to Kristen Anderson, a fabulous consultant who put this together. We really see childcare as integral to the work that counties are doing to try to reboot the economy. And so just because it's difficult and complex, we would urge you to not sort of look away, but to really dig deep with others who are trying to figure this out. And just the impressive number of folks who showed up today is remarkably encouraging to that. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Jacob from the Reinvestment Fund, who's going to talk a little bit about how CDFIs are working in this space.
Thanks, Cindy. So like Cindy mentioned, my name is Jacob Roche. I'm a researcher with the Reinvestment Fund. We're a CDFI with offices in Philadelphia, Baltimore, Atlanta. We work all over the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic region. So before I turn it back to Nicole to give you kind of a whirlwind tour of federal policy and federal resources in childcare, I'm going to just briefly introduce two data tools, two resources that you can use right now that I think are going to be really helpful for you as you're trying to learn more about what's going on in your community and sort of diagnose issues in your counties. So the first, which is highlighted on this screen, is a tool from the Bipartisan Policy Center. It's called their Childcare Gap Analysis. And what you can see, if you click on that link that's below, and I believe we'll send this out to everyone at the end of this presentation, is this is an online resource for learning about the supply and demand and shortage of childcare all across the US. So their analysis covers, I think it's almost up to 30 states right now, but they're always working on expanding it. And if you go there, you can see information about the number of childcare slots, the number of kids who need childcare, and the gap in availability of childcare at the county level, at the congressional district level, and other geographies. So this is a great resource. It's a national analysis, so it's not going to have as much kind of local specific context as you might get from an analysis you would do yourself, or maybe a state specific study, but it's a great resource for an overview of what's happening in your community and a way to benchmark yourself against your peers. Also, one more thing I'll point out that I love about this resource is they've quantified not only the number of slots, the sort of size of the childcare gap in your community, but also the economic impact of that gap. So putting into dollars and cents, the impact of lost wages, lost productivity that results from not having enough high quality childcare supply. So that's a really useful number to have in your back pocket. Let's go on to the next slide. And I'm going to end with a little shameless self-promotion. So in early Q1 2022, NCFN is going to be launching our own data tool, which is going to share information about capital access in the childcare sector. And so Cindy just gave a great overview of how important financial access is for growing a high quality childcare sector. And what we've done and what we're creating and we're going to make available to you is an analysis of SBA lending, CDFI activity, philanthropic activity all over the country. We've analyzed different data on access to capital from these different sources. We've summarized it and mapped it within every county across the US. And so you'll be able to use this resource to understand more about what CDFI activity is currently happening in childcare in your county, what banks are making SBA loans to childcare operators in your community or your peers. And so again, we're hoping to launch this in early 2022, and we'll make sure that a link to this resource gets circulated to the listserv as soon as it's available. So with that, let me pass it back to Nicole.
Thanks, Jacob. So next slide, please. Now we're going to kind of transition into teeing up almost the county spotlights that you'll be hearing from, because one of the interesting things that we hope will come out of this session is for us to get a better understanding of all the resources that are at play to help support you and your efforts to support working families in your communities and increase access to quality